Welcome back to my series where I'm going to be introducing tabletop role-playing games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons. So we've gone through a few thus far. I've only got a few more left because I don't really want to introduce any tabletop games that I haven't had a chance to play in myself. But today we're going through Lancer, which I think deserves way more attention than it's gotten. Because my group hyper-focused on Lancer when we first found out about it. It's a really good mech-based RPG system. So this is going to be a system that takes place in like a far future, and it really focuses on mech combat, which is really cool because I like the systems for it. But it's also a downside because we'll talk about how there isn't a lot for your pilot, like not nearly as much as there is for the mech. But I digress. Lancer is a seriously awesome system that is very different than a lot of other games I've played. So first of all, Lancer is a hex-based system. So you've got your like normal Dungeons and Dragons map with 8 directions if you're standing in the center. This is hex-based, kind of like if you've ever played a Civilization game. My group did try bending the rules a bit to get it to play on a standard Dungeons and Dragons grid. It just doesn't really work out that well. The system is made to be hex-based, so if you're going to play, I recommend you buy a hex-based map to play on. At least in my experiences, most maps nowadays will come with a Dungeons & Dragons grid on one side, and then you flip it over for a hex grid. So if you've got one, strong chance you've got the other already. But I do recommend you play on the hex system. One of the other things that's really different is the turn order for this combat. Turn order doesn't take place on like an initiative roll like Dungeons & Dragons. Instead, it's back and forth. So the players will take a turn, and then the enemies take a turn, and then the players, and then the enemies, and you go back and forth with that. Until like all the players have gotten a turn. Once all the enemies have gotten a turn, it resets initiative and everybody gets their turn back. It's different, but it's not like a great or terrible system. I just think it's interesting. Because if you've got one person in your party who's like in a really bad position, you might say, we need this person to take their turn first because they need to be able to reposition themselves. Or similarly, you might have like your sniper who's got a good shot on someone going first in the initiative order because they want to be able to get that shot before the enemy moves. So it does kind of have a like an over the tabletop kind of direction to it, which I think most groups are pretty okay with. That way you can kind of talk out like, I don't want to go first, or I need to go right now. It's different, but it's not good or bad. Another thing that's different is that your mech actually has 2 different health bars. You have your structure, which is your like how damaged your mech has been like taking combat damage, and then stress, which is like heat. There's not a lot of things that actually work with heat, but it's a very legitimate strategy that you win by just overheating your opponent's mech and their reactor core just dies. I actually, my very first campaign, played a Genghis style mech, which is like a flamethrower mech, which works on like not just damaging with fire, but also heating up the opponents and itself. So I felt like I had a second resource bar that I needed to actually like play around with. That was really fun. And I liked having those 2 different health bars. One other thing Lancer does really well is it tends to have very inclusive storytelling, which I think Dungeons and Dragons especially falls really far, like pretty low on. Like if you like actually go to the Lancer Discord, which is where a lot of the information is, the Reddit isn't super active. Like their profile picture is one of their mechs dabbing in front of a trans flag. Like it's a good system, and that's really shown in its storytelling. The system, so if you watched my last video, when I talked about mutants and masterminds, I talked about how I loved the system because it was flexible. This system is less flexible than mutants and mastermind, but I'd still say it's pretty flexible. If you've got a group of friends where you really, like, you're all into, like, Gundam stuff, then Lancer is probably a really good system because it's easy to, like, flavor your different mechs as Gundams or Zoids or whatever. It's also one of those systems where you can mechanically, like, purchase things for your mechs to do, but you can describe it however you want. So if you've got a like character who has like a laser sword, it doesn't have to be a sword, right? You could have like a mech that's in the shape of like a wolf, and you just bought like laser claws for it or something special. Like I had one mech in a campaign where he had like a legitimate bite attack because he only had the attack unlocked when he went into like a berserk mode. It just worked really well. Like it's really easy to flavor your attacks and your systems and equipment and everything however you want. Um, if you're going to play Lancer, I've played in 2 pretty long campaigns before. The very first one, when we first found out about it, somebody in my group ran they made a campaign for us, which was really fun. That's where I got to play my Genghis. And then we played a campaign called No Room for a Wallflower. I really liked No Room for a Wallflower. It gave you a lot of like really interesting choices for the storytelling. And if you're wanting to play in a campaign with a pre-made adventure, I would start with No Room for a Wallflower. Um, the one thing I will say about that, though, is that it was written to be a 2-part story. And for what I understand, the writers had some issues since the first book came out, and it's kind of up in the air if the second book will ever be released. But there are other pre-made adventures that you can, work with, and they're all like pretty good. The publishers for Lancer are actually really good about like other people writing stories and publishing through their website. And all these like expansions and extra stories also come with aids for their CompCon application, which is a major plus for the system you need to know about. So when I talked about Pathfinder, I talked about how they have like the Archives of Nethys and Path Builder, which are tools to kind of make your character. But these are like sort of more like not by the dev. This is a dev app because you can just go on to it's literally compcom.app. So it's compcon.app. And from there, you can see pretty much everything for the game. The only information you don't get for free is the bestiary with like different monsters and stuff. That you have to actually buy the book to get all of that information. But if you buy the like different expansions, that comes with a like software for the application, so you can keep everything in the app and run from there, and it's super good. This includes things like building your character, keeping track of your health totals. There's even a compendium on the app where you can just go and look through all the different mechs and their weapons and systems, and you could just start building your mech. And when my group of friends first found out about Lancer, we spent a lot of time just going through CompCon and reading about the different mechs and like just building things. And it's really fun, and it's actually a pretty simple system. And this is going to bring us to character creation, because the character creation is almost entirely focused on the mech you're going to be taking into combat. It is a mech-based role-playing game. With the upside of the mech combat and its design is really good. But then the like pilot design is actually really bad. But you're going to start at license level 0. Or most campaigns will. Maybe your campaign doesn't, whatever. But you start off with one of 2 generic mechs, which are actually good. They're not bad just because they're your starter mechs. You could take one through an entire campaign and they're solid. You start with your mechs, you start with your weapons, and that's license level 0. Once you earn your first license, which is essentially your first level, the way level up works is that you buy licenses from manufacturers. Now, the manufacturers have their own lore in the story, which can be, you could have an entire story based around these different manufacturers, or you could just, exclude them and do whatever you want because you're running a Gundam campaign. It's just kind of there. But what happens is there's different types of mechs, and every time you buy a license for the mech, you will unlock its weapons, you might unlock the mech itself, you might unlock some of its software, its equipment. There's a bunch of different stuff. And it's kind of like building a Lego, where your character is, you're like, I'm going to buy this license, and then I'm going to give its weapon to a mech that I bought a different license for. And it's very like plug and play for building your character. So it's not like a Dungeons & Dragons character where everything builds up. It's about unlocking different stuff and then building your mech from the various parts you've got. Now, from that, there are a few other systems, like if you buy enough licenses from a manufacturer, you get a manufacturer bonus. I can't remember what they're called right now. Your characters have different talents, so your character might specialize in like sniping, you might specialize in like guerrilla tactics or stealth. These you can kind of just build up your character from all these various things. And I think this works out really well. Because it's just a different system. It's not so much like you're spending experience points on things like mutants and masterminds. It's not like you level up so you just become a better bard or fighter or whatever, like Pathfinder. It's really its own thing where you're just building a mech, and your mechs have different stats, of course. So you might pick a mech, like when I played my Genghis, which is like my flamethrower mech. The mech was really slow, but it had a high capacity to take heat damage. It had enough weapon slots on it that I could have, I think, 3 different weapons. And then you could build like other things. Like if you want to play a mech that it does hacking abilities, which this is like far in the future, like computers and AI are to the point where they're essentially hacking reality so far that it looks like magic. Um, you might want a mech that has a really high scanner on it, so that because that's kind of like your range for your abilities. Whereas for me, I'm like, I just point a flamethrower at something and shoot. I don't need to have like I don't need very good sensors. And you kind of get to build your mech based on the abilities and the stats that each of them have, which is pretty diverse. I love this. It's so good. Um, I think yeah. So let's get to the bad stuff because I mentioned this twice already. The problem I have with Lancer is that the mech combat and the mech systems are so cool. And then when your character's out of your mech, you just feel incredibly weak. Now, there are systems for your pilot. There are skills so you can make skill checks, but the problem is the bonuses you get for the skill checks are so little compared to the DCs recommended that it doesn't feel like it really does enough. Like it doesn't feel like my character can really specialize. Similarly, your character can have like there's an equipment system where your character can have different types of armor, different types of weapons. You could have like drones to survey stuff. Like there's an equipment system, but it's just bad. It doesn't feel all that good. And I would really like to see a good supplement for Lancer that overhauls your pilot. Because your character goes from like I'm in my mech and I feel awesome and I'm doing all this cool stuff and I have so much customization options to now I'm just a human. That's it. And storytelling wise, your character is supposed to be pretty superhuman. Where it talks about your character probably has genetic or like cybernetic implants. They might have gone through like thousands or millions of hours of advanced like AI training. And then it's just like you step out of your mech and you're just a dude. And that's like, you're like, I don't know what, I don't know. The system for your pilot is bad. I would love to see them actually take something like Cyberpunk that has a really good focus on customizing your characters and kind of combine that with Lancer. So you still have your mech combat, which gets to feel like really cool, but then your pilot just doesn't feel as pathetic. I don't know. But as a heads up, if you choose to play Lancer, which I overwhelmingly recommend you try out Lancer, that's just kind of things you should expect to happen. Is the storytelling is very focused on your mech combat. You do a little bit of RP stuff, maybe a skill challenge or something in there, but the skill challenges are meh. And that's about it. I know maybe I didn't plan this out because I feel like I'm ending on a very negative note. Lancer is good. It's just so like the mech combat is super awesome, and then your pilot's kind of just a dude. It needs work. Maybe one day they'll release a supplement, but I digress. That's gonna be it for this video. This is a lot shorter than my L5R video, thank God. If you liked it, like if you've got any comments or something, let me know because my group hasn't played Lancer in a little bit now, and we just started playing Soulbound, which I'm loving, but that also means we're not going to be playing Lancer anytime soon. So you can kind of feed my addiction in the comments. Similarly, follow the channel because I'm still got a few more of these videos, and I'm going to try to keep doing at least once or twice a week videos. I don't know what I'm going to do once I run out of TTRPGs to recommend, though, and I'm about out because we're probably going to do Emperor Diceless next. Regardless, thank you for being here. I'll see you later. Bye.